And welcome to Together We're Better. I'm so excited to have in the studio today Dr. Mark Laycock from Wichita State, an incredible educator and individual who inspires students around the country and really the globe. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Honored to be here.
Well, it's a thrill because I've had the opportunity to see you work with the Castellaro Orchestras through the Homestead Festival. So I've seen, up close and personal, just the positive impact you can immediately have on a room. You start teaching and the kids' eyes light up and they're ready and they're hungry to take in more information. They connect more with the music. They connect with the idea of getting better. They just find more in the music that they thought was possible because, of course, when you come to a festival, you show up feeling prepared. Right? And then the adjudicator comes in and shows you, and now look at what you're able to do.
Well, I was thinking about this, this week, preparing for this interview, that the nice thing about your groups is that your kids are receptive, that they come in with an open attitude, that Mr. Krijnen has prepared us like crazy, what if? And what if we tried this? And believe me, not every clinic goes that way, that there are some where the kids are so set in their ways and they've been taught that it's my way or the highway, this is the way that things are done, that it's so refreshing to step in front of a group that is open and ready to share and ready to have things shared with them. So thank you. It's a two-way street. It really is. It's not just coming in and the bells and whistles, but it really is a two-way street.
Well, I really appreciate that. For me, it was nice to always the idea for me to have adjudications and to have guests and to have people to come work with the students is to really give a litmus test of how well the students can adapt to the knowledge that they have. And so I really appreciate John Byrne for putting together a festival like this that allows for a lot of time with the adjudicator, because we know that oftentimes that's limited. If you do like a heritage festival or something like that, you might get a 5-minute like high five, but this is really comprehensive. So you really get to see what the students know and how they adapt. So again, it was just really terrific. And for the folks who don't know Mark, he's professor of music at Wichita State University, where he holds the Walenta Faculty of Distinction Endowed Professorship, and he's been recognized with the WSU Excellence in Creativity Activity Award and the College of the Fine Arts Excellent in Teaching Award. He serves as director of orchestras and the coordinator of strings. The WSU Symphony Orchestra appearances under his direction include international tours to Spain and Canada, Carnegie Hall, multiple invited performances at Kansas Music Educators Association in-service workshops, and Dr. Laycock is a member of the board of directors of the Midwest International Band and Orchestra Clinic. He serves as chair of orchestra activities, and he's conductor of the Wichita Youth Symphony, as well as the director of the Wichita Youth Orchestra Program. So for the folks watching, this is an individual who has dedicated so much of his life to just inspiring arts in their community. And that segues into, the sort of the question of today's interview, the main role, which is what is the role of the arts in school? Like why should we continue to advocate to have this resource for our kids?
Well, I like to say that science, and my God, the sciences, are important as our current situation has demonstrated. But science explains the how, and the arts explain the why. So you can get, you can talk how all day long, but for me as a human being, the reason behind things, how does it affect me? How does it affect my community? That to me is the most important. The arts give a student a chance for creativity, for self-expression that you're not going to get probably anywhere else on campus, be it college, be it elementary school, be it high school. A chance for leadership. It's not always those first chair players, but there are ways that creative directors can share and kind of spread those leadership opportunities all around the ensemble. Your last chair viola player can write program notes for a concert. Your second chair cellist can narrate the concert, can introduce a piece. Your third chair second violinist can be a student conductor on a piece. So there are lots of different ways that we can cultivate student leadership. There are also those kids that, maybe advanced algebra is not what gets them out of bed every morning. That, maybe it's orchestra. And because of that, okay, I need to keep my grades up. I'll keep going in English. I'll keep going in science, but orchestra that really motivates me. The concept of teamwork, which in this job environment, I think is incredibly important as careers the workforce continues to evolve. The concept of being able to work together, to collaborate. There's no better example of that on campus than in a large ensemble, particularly an orchestra. We in the arts, we benefit the entire campus. So it's not just those kids that are sitting in front of you in rehearsal on a particular day, but it can be as innocuous as, you know, performance at a pep assembly, or, you know, the orchestra goes and plays Sleigh Ride at a winter assembly. How often are the students in the general campus population exposed to a quote unquote classical music, to stringed instruments, live acoustic stringed instruments? So it's an incredible responsibility that we have, and also a great joy to be able to share that with students who aren't going to get that somewhere else. And I think, Scott, knowing you and knowing my colleagues at Wichita State, even at the college level, when we're dealing with college music majors, I'm realistic in thinking, okay, not everybody's going to end up making a living in music. That even after earning a Bachelor of Music degree in performance and education, many students are going to be drawn in another direction. But I think all of us at all levels, we are cultivating, we are building lifelong arts supporters, because we need that in the general population, people who recognize the importance of the arts and who will go on to support the arts.
Well, that sort of segues into just then the role of the arts in the community, because I mean, you just listed off, you know, a plethora of reasons why any administrator would fight to keep arts on their campus to support, you know, students and not just the folks in the classroom, but everyone in that building. But then as they leave the school system, they enter our community. I think one of the things I've really noticed with all of us sheltered in place is just that fundamental need to congregate. You know, as a species, we just need to be with others. And then how do we tend to celebrate with others? And often music is one of those factors that pulls us together, whether it's concert halls or even at a wedding with the ceremony and the music involved with that, right? There's just so many elements to how music plays a role in our life. Or you could think movie theaters. That movie is not as impactful without the score underneath it, right? So, you know, looking through from going to school into the community, role of the arts in the community, like what should we be doing? How do we keep it going? Why is it necessary to keep our population educated?
Well, if you look at our current situation, and it didn't take long for artists to start to bring about healing, start to bring about a sense of community with the arts. Collaborations just like this, Zoom meetings. You know, who knew what Zoom was 6 months ago? I sure didn't. It was, you know, it was a great PBS television show from the 80s. That's how we responded, and it's there's something very, very human about that, very innate about that. Our instinct is to go back to expression and, like you say, collaboration, to do something in a community atmosphere with somebody else. So I think it's very telling that that's how we in the arts have responded, just by making art. It's maybe not ideal. I would love to be, you know, standing in front of 50, 60 students and making music. I also hope that, you know, emptiness might, well, no, I'm going to go with emptiness. This emptiness that I have, this longing to do, you know, what I've been trained to do and what I miss doing. I hope this longing doesn't go away, that I remember this feeling, you know, a year from now, hopefully 6 months from now, things start to return to normal, that we don't take for granted this incredible gift that we have to come together and to express this artistic need, this artistic talent that we have. I think we can't lose sight of that.
It seems like this is definitely, it's a defining moment, and that's maybe an obvious thing to say, but we have had a run of comfort and sort of status quo for allowing things to happen. And certainly, I was born in 1980, so even though we've had some conflicts globally, my life has never really had to change. I've always been able to go to school. I've always had the supplies I need. I have, you know, access to the internet. I haven't had to ration or do things of that nature. And this is the first time in my life as a 40-year-old that's been part of what's going on in my life. And as you mentioned, this could be a really great measuring stick to remember just how great we have it and what it can look like and what it did look like and what it now once again hopefully will look like. I remember as a kid, you know, in high school reading like Brave New World and these different sort of utopian novels, right? Or dystopian, negative utopias. And this 3-month and then now maybe 6-month, and we'll see what the time window is. Will give us that reference point of always to say, well, we're so fortunate to have this because during that time we had this. So I agree. Like, I hope we all, definitely at the first rehearsal, right, those sounds we're like, all right. And then hopefully not by week 3 we're like, Johnny, stop plucking, and like, so hopefully we retain that joy and spirit. And I think we will, because we had that joy and spirit anyway, and now it'll be just maybe a little bit deeper. You've been teaching for a while now. What do you think some of the key elements to just successful teaching are, generally speaking, maybe outside of the music classroom?
I think it's sharing your humanity with your students, and I think it's very good, like you say, to think beyond the discipline. That we in music, and I'm guilty of this, we tend to think toward the next performance. God, we have a concert in 3 weeks, and we've got to drill it in. Our ensemble classes become very performance oriented. If we're not careful, competition oriented. I didn't get that one at contest. The Heritage Festival, I didn't place as high as I wanted to. So I think it's very important that we keep our eye on just the very global aspect of what we do. It's global and yet it's personal. That what made Mrs. Martin, my first grade teacher, tremendously memorable was not the assignment about the Gettysburg Address that my poor penmanship tried to do, but it was humanity that she gave to me. That's what I remember, is her caring, her concern, love. I think it really comes down to love as a teacher, and thinking, Mr. Brewster, my high school journalism teacher, and he's the definition of curmudgeon. That and some of the things that he would say, and chain smoker and all of that. But when it came down to it, we in the class knew that he cared, that he loved us, that he wanted to make us better people, and journalism was a vehicle for that. And I think we in the music education business, that it's the same kind of thing. We're trying to make people better, trying to improve the human condition. Music is the vehicle for that, but it's really the same.
So looking then in our music classrooms, if we're talking about humanity and love and this sort of willingness to be vulnerable and connect, what's nice about that, of course, is that is regardless to whether it's remote or in person. Because if I'm going to call a family member, I can convey my love and comfort and joy through the screen. Now, it's a little bit different, some of the incidentals, right? So in my classroom, I can give a quick high five and check in. Sometimes the body language gets a little frumpy. You can bump them up. And there's some nuanced and subtle things that we can certainly do. Fundamentally, I don't know if the screen will stop that connection if you are already working to establish it.
And I hope that it's something that Zoom and these similar platforms has certainly made it more palatable these last 6 months, without this kind of connection, without the continuation of these things that you're talking about, the community, the relationships that we established from August or September, they've continued, thank goodness. But I also hope that this isn't seen, in the future by a pencil pushing administrator or somebody higher up. Oh, well, we can do this much cheaper, and this remote learning, it seemed to be okay. And I think it's because of the relationship that was established that it has been successful. And what's going to make this fall a little bit more challenging is that we're having to establish those relationships virtually, and then hopefully as soon as possible, get into an in-person kind of situation. But and teachers will do it. They are miracle workers, and I cannot say enough about the colleagues in my profession. Put an obstacle in front of them, and they're going to find a way to overcome it. As a 55-year-old, to discover new routes of technology, I still don't understand half of it. But goodness, I understand it so much more today than I did in January. Simply because, if I'm going to connect with my students and maintain that connection, I've got to find a way to do it. No such thing as a summer vacation for educators, particularly this summer.
No, I have family asking, "Why are you on your computer all day?" And I understand, because of course I do want to be connected to the family that is around me, but there is so much to learn right now. We want to make sure that we serve our communities well. And so, because our school is going to Canvas, there's a whole new LMS that I have to learn and understand, and how it gets integrated in the kids' day, and how it gets integrated for the parents, and how I can integrate music and apply and adapt my curriculum for that. So there's a constant growth, which is also, I think, just a wonderful role model for students, because we are demonstrating that we're lifelong learners. And so that's something that is also that we can take from this. But to your point of admin, maybe finding, less expensive ways to educate our kids, I think it is still universally agreed that the remote model is a Band-Aid for in-person teaching. I think we're going to all do our very best, and we don't want to discredit any of the efforts, but we know the curriculum is not going to be as rich or have as much depth, because it's just, we don't have all of the tools which we would if we were all in the same place. And I think even the tech companies here in the Bay Area are feeling the same, that sure, their employees can do an awful lot of work on their computer at home, but there's a dynamic about being in the office and communicating and collaborating and quickly checking in, that when you're on a Zoom meet, if there's 50 people, that individual is less empowered to speak or give their impression of what's going on, and there's lag, and there's interrupting people. Oh, no, you go ahead. Like, we're doing our best, but I certainly hope that we realize that this is going to be the best version of this model, but we still need to get into our classes as soon as we can safely. Once the science dictates it's acceptable to go back into the classroom, we can keep all of our constituents safe, then, I'm sure we're all going to look forward to that experience. But so, COVID happened. We've been able to experiment, and I'm sure you've had this conversation with your students. The conversation I had with mine was, we are learning how to do this. So thank you for being part of this experiment, and please continue to give us feedback for what's effective, right? So we're going to try this assignment. If this doesn't work, or if the information isn't conveyed effectively, let's make it better, because I am now a first-year teacher in the world of remote learning. So we have to have an open dialogue. Please don't assume that I know what I'm doing.
Something about earlier, you said lifelong learner, which music educators who are watching, two names that you should be aware of if you're not. Dan Long, who is incredible educator up in Michigan. Dan Long, to me, is the definition of lifelong learner. And then just a few years, his senior, unfortunately passed away now, but Marvin Rabin, somebody else that up until, I believe he lived into his 90s, conducted every All-State probably twice, but somebody who just exemplified constantly and being willing to adapt and change his craft. It wasn't just, this is the way it's always been done, but to make those changes to make himself a better person, better educator. The in-person experience that we were talking about a few moments ago, and the importance of that, and just the informal interactions that happen in the hallways. Mm-hmm. And obviously on a Zoom situation, you can't replicate that. Having your door open, your office door open, and a student wander in, just an informal conversation that might touch on, hey, I got this going on at home, or, my scholarship isn't quite covering what I'd hoped, those sorts of things that maybe in a more formal conversation wouldn't be shared. Same thing with colleagues, just to be able to see a colleague. You mentioned body language, to be able to, through tone of voice, say, is everything okay? Are you having, how's your day been? That sort of thing. Open the channel for some kind of sharing, or hopefully some healing. Because of that, I think the synchronous experience, as challenging as it is, the synchronous experience, at least partially, needs to be a part of any plan going forward. We need to be able to check in with our students. My advanced conducting class that met in the spring, continued to meet in the spring. Conducting, we kind of got through it. We never really had them conduct an ensemble at the end, which would have been the culminating project. But still, we were able to talk about gesture, talk about score study and analysis. So we did do some valuable things, but just the opportunity to check in. Hi, Steve, how are you doing? For a student to hear his or her name and to know that you care. So I know there are questions about equity. Do we have equal access? Does everybody have access technologically to what's happening. And I know that's a whole nother issue, but it's so important that those students have and continue to have that connection with us and with their peers.
What are some things you're excited about in the coming year?
I've seen teachers just be extremely creative. And I mean, a great example, I'm talking to Scott Krijnen right now. We're lucky to see each other once a year, maybe. And that's a great year when that happens. But to be able to sit down like this is amazing. So I again, salute those teachers, those artists who have created the opportunities to really make something brand new and exciting. I mean, this is a tremendous resource that you're building through your channel. I wandered through it the other day, thought, I don't belong with the people that you've interviewed, but I'm honored to be among them. And so to see my colleagues older than myself, and geez, there are colleagues older than myself, a couple of them. Time for fruit cup. To see them adopt to new technology, to sometimes lead the way in terms of this is what's possible. We've at Wichita State, we've had a technology push, I'd say the last 10, 12 years, invitation to develop online courses, invitation to reach out to virtual learning. For me, it's, I'm a music teacher. How the heck can I do that? And by being, more or less forced to do that, you find ways to make it happen, to make it meaningful. I still say there's no substitution for being in front of the ensemble. Yeah. There are also opportunities to cover topics that maybe we wouldn't have time to address otherwise. Composition, improvisation, yep. Music history, music theory. So some of the things that long laundry list that's in the back of your head, geez, if we had one more rehearsal, if we had another week, I'd love to do some supplementary exploration of this topic. Now we have that opportunity. So that's really a blessing.
And I think that's a good reminder, because if you go through the Facebook feeds when things are announced, like we can't have ensembles because of the spread and things like that, there was understandably grief, because we are so connected. Like canceling concerts was hard, not doing trips and tours, all that was hard. But we do, like you mentioned, we have this opportunity to adapt our curriculum to the current state, and we will get back to that. But for now, we can really maybe develop some really in-depth curriculum that's based on theory or music history or composition, improvisation, as you mentioned, that then sticks when we all come back together, because we now have had the time to really develop them. We did a composition unit, and what was nice about it was for the students who maybe don't want to play a solo on their violin, for them it was great to dive in and really understand the modes and create something, and then publish it, and then have other students play it. And that was very empowering to see. And during the rigorous performance course that we've kind of established, it can be really hard to have those moments. So I already saw some real positives for opportunities to really highlight a variety of strengths within our community. So very excited, about that.
And there again, we have those students that we're reaching out to, those students that maybe aren't your first year players. I've had private lessons since, I was in the womb. But maybe composition, maybe improvisation is the thing that really lights them on fire. So it's great to hear you say that. Yeah. I want to share two things that I recently participated in that making lemonade out of lemons, essentially. Just finished the Ohio State University String Teachers Workshop. So I was one of 16, 18, 20 clinicians. Supposed to be in beautiful downtown Columbus, Ohio. Bob Gillespie and his staff just did amazing work in creating a meaningful community, and they doubled the attendance. Mm-hmm. Folks that wouldn't have been able to travel to Columbus on a typical year were able to take part in this. They really did find a way to build cohesion, to build a sense of collaboration, a sense of community among these attendees. We had a mixture of asynchronous and synchronous learning. So I made, I think, 3 separate videos: score study, gesture, and then we had a Q&A session. So we could sit down and fortify some of the things that were talked about. I had probably the most fun. I think I had 16 15-minute sessions with attendees. So just a one-on-one,
Yeah.
and basically whatever you want to talk about. A lot of folks just said, right hand, left hand, independence. So I was happy to do some exercises with them. Sometimes we just talked about career path. Thinking about higher ed, either talk me out of it or share what your path was, that sort of thing. So it was great to connect with those 16 individuals, as well as, the other 230 folks that took part in this workshop. Back in May, Gail Barnes, who runs the string pedagogy program at the University of South Carolina, she invited me to just speak with, kind of interact with her graduate string pedagogy students. And it was something that, it wasn't a large class, so I would never be able to fly out to Columbia and do that. But to sit down for, I think, a couple of class sessions, and they presented some score study that they had done and some pedagogy that they were prepared to present. And it was great to meet those three, to know that our profession is in great hands. The next generation is well prepared and excited. But I'm grateful to Gail for giving me that opportunity to give something back to them.
Well, and what might be nice also as we get back to, to more of a normal state is what you mentioned, which is we'll have all of our classes, we'll be able to teach like we were, but I might be able to give you a call and say, hey, we're going to be performing this piece. Can we Zoom you in and can you give us some feedback? Or, hey, we've got these 5 teachers at our district who are really trying to align their curriculum. And you might not be able to fly out to the Bay Area, but we can set up like a Zoom meeting like we did today. So there are some things where as a nation, we're getting more comfortable with these tools and it's because it's forced, but that's okay, right? We had to do it. I know our district, of course, has been really trying to get devices in every kid's hands. We have 31,000 students. Probably 40% of those kids don't have devices that really work. They might have a phone, but that doesn't work for a lot of the different platforms that we use. And so they've been making the push. Well, now this has created an environment where it just has to be done. So the first day of school is simply that, handing out every piece of technology necessary for every family to be successful in our school district. Had we not had COVID, which of course, there's a lot of sadness that comes with it, but the positive is that we are being now accelerated into serving our students more equitably, which is one of the big positives out of a very challenging time for a lot of people.
And some real tools that we can keep in our superhero utility belt going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that's, I spoke with a colleague that we have to acknowledge the grief. We have to acknowledge that for some families, this will be a generational challenge, right? Because it knocked out their industry, or it was just, there weren't enough resources to support them through it. And there's going to be some big challenges that we as a nation have to come together and support each other and help lift people up. But again, we do have some new tools that might make the version that we eventually get to better for more. And I'd like to just move on to another idea here. One of the things that you were mentioning was that you have the Institute for Composer Diversity, which of course is something that has been neglected until now, really. We tend to look at, Western European, a very small slice of Western European, when there are all sorts of other people that were at that time whose music hasn't been shared for a variety of historical reasons. But could you talk about, the Institute of Composer Diversity and how this has been like a nice time to work on that?
Oh, you bet. Well, I used to be proud when I could, work with a all-state group or an honor group, and I would gently insist we've got to incorporate some contemporary music. I want at least one piece by a living American composer. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of our responsibility to the next generation that's coming up. And I've realized in the last year even that it needs to go beyond that. So not only do we need to support our living composers, but also diverse composers, underrepresented populations. And this website is a wonderful starting point at which to do that. So there's a huge database that's continuing to be built, composerdiversity.com. And you can search, you can set up different search parameters, and it will help you find repertoire right along this path for your ideally for your ensembles.
Well, and it's amazing actually going through how much there is already written that we just don't know about, because I learned a lot of Suzuki, right? So that means my students will learn Suzuki. And of course, my teacher was taught Suzuki. So we have this pathway of information. So it's not even an intentional narrowing. It's just sort of a default narrowing just because we're sharing in that way. So we have to really be active about it. And I think that's, one of the things that we can all do is to introduce people to new music, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but, if you're going to do a fundraiser concert, you typically play pieces that folks recognize.
Right.
Because it makes them happy. And then, if they're happy, they might support just a little bit more. And so you have to frame the idea as like we are expanding our understanding of what's available, and we're going to introduce it to where it's no longer a new thing. It's just what we do, because it's understood that Beethoven's Fifth is going to be played. But there are so many other pieces that are just not part of our normal sort of concert seasons, and change is hard. And I think some people, well, I know Beethoven's Fifth. I like Beethoven's Fifth. It's also a good piece. We should play Beethoven's Fifth. And I think it's safe to say it'll get played regardless. So we can go ahead and keep promoting pieces that have been around and are wonderful, and just to expand just who we have in this tent of musicians.
And I think we have a real need and a real responsibility to diversify our audience.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to diversify our programs, that this music might be accessible to somebody, might lure somebody off the street to say, yeah, I'd like to see what, a contemporary Spanish piece sounds like, or some Russian music that was just composed last week. I think it's important that we constantly churn, if you will, our audience, that our audience can become as predictable as our programs themselves. So it's good for our players. It's certainly good for us as conductors to stretch and to reach out. To get out of our comfort zone a little bit. So whatever opportunities we can.
So just closing up with some of the ideas that we've been, thrown around. One is that having the arts is sort of allows for humanity. And within that humanity, we're actively trying to reach out to as many communities as possible. And one of the ways that you've just done that, as you've mentioned, is just making sure you have new music at every All-State. All-State, for folks that don't know, it's a collection of students from around that particular state. So a California All-State would draw students from all over California, and they would get to work together, meet each other, and then work with a guest conductor. And so when Dr. Laycock works and prepares a program, that means we're involving something new, or something that the students may not have been exposed to, or something that the audience might not be familiar with. So that's an easy way to just say, hey, let's expand what we have. But also, again, just going back to, I think if we're dealing with humanity and we're dealing with love, then inclusivity and celebrating the entire history will be sort of a default reaction. It's hard to have humanity and love if you're not supporting everybody.
Part of my frustration as a white male is watching Black Lives Matter and sympathizing and empathizing and supporting, but thinking, what can I do? And my heritage, my ethnicity is part of the problem. So I think one concrete way that we can take action is by diversifying our program.
Yeah. And so I'm in San Jose, and we have a very heavy Hispanic population. And so we want to make sure that our ensembles reflect that. If our ensembles don't reflect the population of our cities and our counties, then there's also an issue. So making sure that within the school, we find ways to give access to everybody. So at Castellero, everyone gets an instrument, no one has to pay for it, just to make sure that every element of our little community has access to the arts, because if we don't give access, we can't get them engaged and in. And so that's also a big platform that I try to push, is just free and equal access for everybody, making sure that every trip is paid for if necessary, that every instrument is free, that every repair is taken care of, because they don't mean to drop it, it happens. And then some families can pay and some can't. We want to make sure we have those resources. And so I agree with you. It can be very hard to know how to support and help, but there have been just so many resources now that we can be educated about it. And again, lifelong learners, maybe it's 2020, and, a lot of folks could say it's too late. It's late, but let's start now, actively support in as many ways as possible and help our students understand it and give them access as well. I just want to leave once again with just talking about the energy that you release in every room is something that you don't get to witness by everyone. I just want to thank you for the years and years that you have been able to give to the community of music education. I'm sure to just even to your neighbors, just on your street, just what you offer is such a positive force. And I try and do everything I can, whether it's juggling chainsaws, to get the kids' attention and make them feel loved and supported. But it was incredible to watch you work with the students of Castellaro, and all the students at Wichita, and all the students that get to work with you during the all-state things are so fortunate that you got to wander into their lives for even a few moments to kind of celebrate what's possible. So I just want to say thank you for all that you've offered and that you give, and that you made a comment earlier looking at the other folks that are on Together We're Better. You 100% belong, because you are what I'd like to be when I grow up. So thank you very much for your time and your energy and all that you give to music and your community.
Well, thank you, Scott. Pleasure visiting with you. This was a lot of fun.
And I want to say thank you to everyone who's watching. Remember that together we're better, and to always be our best selves.